Hi everyone, welcome to Things Lucy Reads. I'm Luce and this is an August and September wrap-up video. I only read 2 books in August and I read 9 in September, and I detailed some of my September reading in a reading vlog which I will link up here. So the 2 books that I read in August were both graphic novels. These were the only 2 books I finished. I also read part of The Luminous Dead by Caitlin Starling, which I finished this month, October, and I also read part of The Lawrence Brown Affair by Cat Sebastian, which I finished in September, which I will talk about later on. The 2 graphic novels that I finished are Taproot by Keezy Young, which is a little romance comic that I had from NetGalley about a gardener and a ghost, as the subtitle says. It's been quite a while now, so I don't remember specifics about this novel, but it's a queer romance. I think that one of them is non-binary. I'd have to double check. I wrote a review for this because I had it from NetGalley, so I will link that down below. I thought this was really cute and I thought the premise was great and I really loved the characters, but I just wanted a little bit more room to grow, I guess. Pun not intended, because it's about gardening. It was 2 separate stories. So the first one was them sort of coming to terms with their feelings for each other, and then the next part of the book was like an adventure that they went on. And I just would have liked it to be them figuring out their feelings for the whole book, perhaps, because it did feel a little bit rushed and a little bit like it was missing something. But anyway, I did really like it and I gave it 4 stars, and if you want just a really cute queer romance with a ghost in it, this is your book. And then the second graphic novel that I read in August is Gary Gygax and the Creation of D&D, Rise of the Dungeon Master by David Kushner and Corin Shadme. This is a sort of like a biography of Gary Gygax, who is one of the inventors of D&D, but it was more a biography of the game itself than Gary specifically. It had a little bit about his life and what led him to create this game, but ultimately it was about the things that inspired him to create the game, the many iterations the game went through, struggles he had getting people to play it. I think that if you knew a lot of things about D&D and its invention already, then you wouldn't get a lot out of this book, but I didn't know much about it, so I thought that it was pretty interesting and pretty informative, so I gave it 4 stars. Then in September I challenged myself to read all of my Kindle Unlimited books because I was going to lose my subscription at the end of that month, and I didn't get to read all of them, but I read quite a few and most of them were good. Okay, so the only book that I read that I didn't talk about at all in that vlog is The Lawrence Brown Affair by Cat Sebastian. This is a gay Regency romance novel featuring the brother of the main character of The Soldier Scoundrel, which is the previous one in this series, which is called the Turner series. This is about this earl who lives a very secluded life. His father and his brother were both like absolute terrible people, and people refer to them as mad. And so now he thinks that he is also mad because, you know, his father and his brother were, so he must be as well. So he kind of like shuts himself off from the world, and his house is crumbling down around him. He has a son who like doesn't really have anything to do with because he doesn't want to pass the madness on. He thinks that his house is not fit for like human habitation, and especially not for children. And then there's the brother, who is called George. He like makes a terrible mistake and falls in bad with a gang that he worked with in London, and he has to get away from them so that they don't go after his brother from the previous book and their sister. He goes to work for Lawrence, the Earl, as a secretary, and to just sort of get his house like back in working order and fix it up and make sure it doesn't leak and fix the holes in the walls and get rid of the vermin and stuff like that. And of course, over the course of the novel, they fall in love. I really loved this novel the same way that I just really loved The Soldier Scoundrel. I gave it 5 stars. While I was reading it, I thought that probably what Lawrence was perceiving as madness was in fact just autism or ADHD. And afterwards I read a review from Zan West, who is autistic, and who said that Lawrence reads as autistic. It was intentional on the part of the author. She does a lot with writing historical romance that's intersectional, so not just characters who lived in the past and are queer, but they are like marginalized in some other way. I will link Zan West's review down below so that you can read it yourself. It has a lot of content warnings. I thought it was really good. I loved the hell out of it, and I just think I'm gonna love all of these books. The next book that I read was the second volume of Sandman, which is called Doll's House. I hated this volume. I gave it 2 stars. Look, I talked about my reasons for disliking this in the vlog. I don't really want to get back into it. For every 1 page in 5 that I like, the other 4 slap me in the face twice. And that's all I want to say about it. And I'm not going to read any more of Sandman, and I don't think that I need to. Like, let's just leave it in the past, please, where it should have stayed. The next book that I read was Venom Rex, which I absolutely loved. I gave it 5 stars. I wanted to read a Venom comic because I really enjoyed the recent movie, and I wanted to read a comic that was going to be sort of like that, and I really hit the jackpot with this one because it was exactly the same kind of philosophy from Eddie. He was just as much of a mess as he was in the movie, and it was about them fighting something that was like much, much bigger than them, but they had to fight it because there's no one else, and the fate of the world is at stake. It had a cameo from Miles Morales as Spider-Man. It mentioned Thor. I don't remember if he was in it, but it definitely mentioned it. And at one point, Venom told Eddie that they love him, which was the thing that really clinched it for me, and I adore it. Because it tied into the Thor series God of Thunder, and the first volume of that series was also on Kindle Unlimited, I borrowed that and I read that, and that was really enjoyable. I really love Thor. Like I said in the vlog, I really love that both of the Thor volumes that I've read so far have been like, Thor goes on a quest to solve a mystery and also makes a journey of self-discovery at the same time. The other volume that I've read is The Unworthy Thor, and I loved that, and I loved this one. I haven't read on. I am going to probably soon because I just really, really loved it. And that comic also had a cameo from Iron Man. And the way that this volume of Thor ties into the Venom comic is that the villain is the same in both of them. So in one it's Venom and Spider-Man fighting it, in the other one it's Thor. And I think they may kind of converge again like further on in their respective series. So I'm looking forward to that. The next book that I read and finished was Midday Moon by Yaoi Monzen, which was a fantasy manga with a gay romance in it about this hotel that sits on the intersection of the mortal world and the spirit world, and you find out about how the king of the spirit world is like a human sacrifice who has to go there and rule it, and they lose all memories of being human. If they come to the hotel, they have to bring a special incense because they can no longer breathe the air of the mortal world, and there's someone working at the hotel which has a past that involves the human that the king of the spirits used to be, and look, they fall in love. I really loved it. It just ticked all of my boxes. I was reading it going like, this book was written for me specifically, and I gave it 5 stars. The next book I read in September was an audiobook, but it was a reread for me. I've read the physical copy before, and that book is Nimona by Noelle Stevenson. I really enjoyed this and I gave it 5 stars because it was just an incredibly fun time, just like the novel was. I don't know if I like the voice that was put on for Ambrosius. He sounded like, I know that he's very pompous, but he sounded just like a little too pompous. Like, if it was like if Draco Malfoy sounded like Professor Umbridge. That's the kind of vibe that I got from Ambrosius, and it just didn't sound right to me. But that was a minor thing. I still gave it 5 stars. The thing that I will say about that though is I don't know how well that audiobook will go over, and I don't know how well the jokes in it will land if you don't have the visual reference of the audiobook in your mind. I couldn't even tell you any specific parts of it, but I just felt like if I didn't know what was going on in the background in a visual kind of sense, I wouldn't have thought it was as funny as I thought it was. And if you have listened to the audiobook but you haven't read the graphic novel, please tell me what you thought of it, because I would like to know how that actually goes over. But honestly, I think that you either need to read this as you listen, or you need to have read this first, because otherwise it might just be like listening to half of the story. Anyway, but it was good. And then the last 2 books that I read in September and finished were the first 2 volumes of The Prince in His Dark Days by Hiko Yamanaka. Okay, so this series is very much The Prince and the Pauper crossed with Ouran High School Host Club. There's this girl who's really poor, her father is kind of neglectful, and she basically, from what I understood as I was reading, has to revert to sex work to make money so that he can buy alcohol and also they can pay rent. She finds out that she looks exactly the same as this rich guy, and then he goes missing, and his like best friends slash handlers come and get her to fill in for him so that everything that's happening with the rich guy's dad's company and his inheritance of it goes off without a hitch, at least until they can get him back. I was a little bit iffy about the first one, wasn't sure how I was going to feel about it, but by the end of the second volume I absolutely loved it, and I'm going to pick up the rest of the series to finish it off one day because I think I'm going to really enjoy it. So yeah, those are the books I read in August and September. If you have read any of these, please feel free to let me know what you thought. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed it, please leave me a thumbs up, and I will see you in my next video. Bye everyone.